children, not sure, about 9 years. Our children swam together on Manhattan Marlins. So I'm going to get into my presentation first, and then we can talk a little bit more in depth about my family's history if you want, and we will definitely go over all these wonderful questions. There was some really good questions in here, so I'm quite impressed with the research you guys did. So what Dr. Perez just touched on there a little bit about gender and sexuality, I just wanted to touch on that a little more in depth. So gender is how you identify, outwardly, female, male, non-binary. Sex is how you were born. What are the anatomical portions of that? And then sexuality is your sexual orientation or preference. So in today's world, it's actually always been this way. It's just becoming more prevalent now, outwardly. Gender and sexuality are two different things. That is something I learned a few years ago, came to light. But just keep that in mind as we go forward with this talk. In addition to the transgender that you guys are hearing about, LGBTQ, I just want you guys to also realize that some unknown facts about the sexes are, there are 6 biological karyotypes that do not result in the death of a fetus, which means the fetus can be born, the baby is born. So they'd have a chromosome of only X, you can see the numbers here. XX is most common form of female, XXY, Klinefelter, XY, most common form of male. So those are the two that we're used to, right? XX and XY. XXY and XXXY, okay? So if you have, where you have XXY, XYY, XXXY, these are gonna, show different anatomical features, different a little bit on how they express from what you would see as we said, binary, right? XX, XY. So you can also have people that are asexual who, are what's the word I'm looking for? Not asexual. Anthropomorphic, I guess is a word for that. I don't know if that's politically correct. But just not really going either way, right? Identifying. And I just want you guys to realize that a lot of these aren't, it's never a choice in my opinion, but there are biological reasons for why people would identify a different way too. Also, 1 in 1,500, right? So the population of Wamego is 4,000. So you gotta think, 2 people in that town can be born with mixed genitalia and are called intersex. The term hermaphrodite is not politically correct anymore, we don't use that. So if you're born intersex, if a parent makes that choice for you at birth, they could be going the wrong way. A lot of parents today are deciding not to choose until the child's older and then figure it out because you don't know. So, my family. This picture is already a few years old. We really need a new, updated one. My oldest daughter down there, she's getting ready to graduate high school. So I have 2 teen daughters. Well, and now my son is a teenager. He's 13, and myself. He's been out and living as male for over 2 years. The very first time he came to me, he was 7, and he didn't use the word transgender at all. He came to me and he said, I feel like I should have been born a boy. This does not feel right. And in tears, crying. And I said, okay, well, you've been kind of tomboyish, just keep doing what you're doing. You don't have to play with Barbies and girls' toys. You can dress in shorts and ball caps. It's okay, let's just keep going. The second time he came to me, he was 10, and he said, seriously, Mom, I feel like I should have been born a boy. I want to go speak to a counselor. And I said, okay, then that's what you're gonna do. It was his choice to go talk to a counselor, and the only reason he went to the counselor was not to stay female and change to female. It was just to work through feelings and have it help our family to work through everything. And in talking to him, he can't remember a time when he didn't feel like he should have been born a boy. And even though he's been out for over 2 years, he still says things that kind of make me go, oh, or surprise me. Just a few weeks ago, he said, even when I was really little, he says, when I pictured myself in the future, I always pictured myself as a man, as a husband, as a father, not as a mother, as a wife, as a female. So even from really little, he just couldn't see himself in the female role. So this is from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I mean, those stats speak for themselves. So, and I knew this even before, just as far as LGBTQ went as a whole. This is kind of broad spectrum for that. So when he came to me, I mean, I love my child unconditionally. I'm always going to be there to support him. So I know one of the questions was in there, I'm going to touch a little bit on these as we go through. One of them was, how did I react when he first came to me and came out? I feel like I handled it okay. I comforted him. I told him we'd figure stuff out. I loved him no matter what. His dad struggled a little in the beginning, and when I told him about it, and I said, all Sid needs to hear from you now is that you love him unconditionally. He's like, of course I love him unconditionally. I said, just tell him that. And he did, and we worked through things. So, as family, if you guys in the classroom ever become mothers, are there any guys in this fall?
In the afternoon class.
Okay. If you guys decide to become mothers, or even if you have nieces or nephews or whatever, the biggest thing is just be supportive for those family members. You don't have to agree with it 100%, but let them know you're there for them, you love them, and it will go a very long way. So school, this is right before 8th grade this year, or 7th grade, sorry, gosh, I've got so many between senior and junior in this. Wamiko Middle School has been very supportive. We went to them as he was entering into 6th grade and talked to the counselors and told them the whole story, and they went above and beyond. They made sure, and this is going to touch on some of these questions, the counselors went and talked to all the teachers before he started to let them know. Now these teachers had never had SIDS, so they didn't have like a preconceived idea of female male. But the teachers the counselors went and told the teachers what was going on, and then the way Sid came out to all the classmates and friends was a few of his very good friends already knew, and he went ahead and told them it's okay to tell people. And then when he got to school, he told some more friends, acquaintances and stuff, hey, this is what's going on, I'm doing this. And as middle school goes, the gossip grapevine took care of the rest. It spread like wildfire, and within 2 days, everybody knew. I mean, it's a smaller school, right? And it went fairly well. There's some kids that had trouble, and not necessarily in a disrespectful manner, just because they've been going to school with him since 2nd grade. That's a long time to know a person is she, her, and then have to switch. But they have gradually gotten to that. There were a few instances where he ran into some trouble, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Nothing horrible, and it's since stopped. We'll touch on that in a little bit, because it's in one of the questions too. So one of the things the teachers do is they always use correct pronouns. And if a student forgets to say a correct pronoun, because it's been long enough now, the teachers will back them up and say, hey, remember Sid's he, him now, and then go about their day, and everybody's fine. He's allowed to use the locker room he feels most comfortable in. They really went above and beyond in this, because when he started in 6th grade, okay, so first of all, middle school locker rooms are just awkward. There's no way around that for anybody. But he really didn't want to go into the girls' locker room. But then he's known these guys since 2nd grade. Do I really want to be going in there with them? Not really. The counselors and the teachers said, we have a coach's locker room, which is really just a small little office. That can be Sid's when he comes to gym. And he changes in there by himself, and everybody's happy. So that was his choice. I did not put that on him. He did choose to do it that way. And like I said, he does use the boys' bathroom, goes in stall, and everything's copacetic with that. School sports. So 7th grade is when you can officially start school sports. CASHA rules state that a student is allowed to compete with the identity that they choose, but once they start with that gender identity, they can't change it. So if you're starting in 7th grade as a female, you're going to go all the way through senior year of high school female, or vice versa. I made sure Sid knew that going in, and I got a, yeah, Mom, I know. I knew there was very, 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 very little chance he would change his mind, but that is where we're at. So he gets to compete with the boys. He just started track, running distance like his older sister. And so that's a picture of the first track meet. It wasn't a great photo because I didn't want to freak him out in his very first race, taking a photo of him, so. Club sports, so like I said, not school rules, but club sports, the Montego teams, it's a boys and girls team, so he fit, I mean, it didn't matter, but they did list him as male on the roster. Swim team, they went above and beyond. USA Swim was fantastic. Oh, it kind of blipped out some of my pictures there, but anyway, he had his gender changed on the roster. He was allowed to compete with the boys. They allowed him to wear swimsuits, change the swimsuit regulations for him. He could wear a top as he competed with the boys, because typically when you're racing that is not allowed, but we had a permission slip for that. And then he eventually got to the point where he just wore trunks, jammers they call it. But yeah, so also on the swim team, when I actually took the lead on that one because it was just when he was first coming out. I think that was even before we came out to school, honestly, because he'd been with it so long. All the parents and all the swimmers were super supportive. I went to everybody and they were just like, okay. And all the kids were like, well, Della can tell you how Ruth handled it, but it was fine. Everybody's super supportive. Everybody's still friends with Sid and loves him. So, experiences of people, this is nationally. This is from the National Center for Transgender Equality. 2016 survey with over 7,500 respondents. This is the most recent survey out there. So those who express transgender identity or gender nonconformity in grades K through 12 reported alarming rates of harassment, physical assault, and sexual violence. 6% of respondents were expelled for their gender identity and expression. And this is I highlighted this for a reason, right? You guys are future teachers here. Teachers and staff members whose job, in part, includes ensuring student safety were too often the perpetrators of harassment and violence. 31% of sample reported harassment by teachers or staff, and 5% even physical assault by teachers, and 3% sexual assault. Now, like I said, you guys are the future teachers, and we're gonna get into this more again, but the biggest thing is that you are there to help protect children, be their advocates, be a safe space. A lot of kids, and this isn't just transgender children, right? There's a lot going on in the world. And just be there as a support system in addition to educating them. So this is the Kansas State report, and this is from the 2015 survey that was done. So 83% experienced some form of mistreatment. And then 59% were verbally harassed, 27% physically attacked, 12% were sexually assaulted because of being transgender, right? And then, I mean, that's just a very high number. So in Wamego, like I said, it is a small town. I was very nervous about what coming out would do for us as a family, for my child, just in general. And I feel like we have just had such a wonderful experience with it. Everybody's been very supportive. If there is any nasty talk or gossip, I don't hear about it. It's not to me, and I definitely don't even hear about it in the background. Neither does my child. So I feel like we are a hidden gem in this, and I couldn't have asked for a better town to have come out in. So classmates' level of support, you can see 21% are very supportive, 35% are supportive, neither supportive or unsupportive, 39, and then unsupportive and very unsupportive are 5% total. So what you're seeing in this is, compared to those bigger numbers, it's not so much the classmates, right? And the same is true in the school, and what's the word? And at Wamego, there's only been one little instance with a classmate, and there was one instance with a teacher. I'll get into that. Actually, before I talk about this, let me talk about that. So there was one teacher for Sid who didn't want to use proper pronouns. Opted though, and just instead of using previous pronouns, just didn't use any pronouns and just decided to it was a gym class, so there were 2 teachers already, and just decided to kind of ignore him. And the other gym teacher just kind of took over. Sid went to his side of the class, and that teacher is very accepting. That teacher has since left the school district, and I did not make a big stink about it then, because I felt like, okay, he has another teacher to go to, that other teacher's now off on the side, I'm not gonna worry about it. If this had been like an English class or something where it was just that teacher, I definitely would have been going to the counselors and principal and been like, look, this is not a good situation for my child. Because it is very dehumanizing when he is not called proper pronouns, or if he's called his past name. So, and when I mean I mean deep emotional stress. Like you can't, and leading, if it's happening enough, it can lead to depression and just a whole host of problems. So, like I said, I let that one go, and it worked itself out. However, if it hadn't been like that, if it had continued and we didn't have a choice, I would have taken a bigger step on that.
Monica, can you tell them about Sid's name?
Yeah, sorry. So Sid was born Sydney, S-Y-D-N-E-Y, Marie, and chose to just go with Sid, S-I-D. So got very lucky on that. He even has mentioned, I'm the only one you gave a gender neutral name to, like it can go either way, unlike his sisters. He says there must have been a reason for that. So the biggest thing was at the school, and they made sure to take care of this, was substitutes weren't necessarily always notified ahead of time, and there was one substitute, and she did not do it on purpose because she just didn't know. She read it off the roster, and she's like, Sydney Marie? And he was mortified because he was just making progress with, making sure all these kids knew. It was pretty early on, and then that happened. So it was a little bit of a setback, but it was fine. It got taken, it was just made known to the counselors, and they always put in their notes now for the substitute teachers. Hey, by the way, student is transgender, transitioning, use he, him pronouns, and it's Sid, only Sid Schaefer. And it went fine. There was one incident with a student that, and this is during a tornado drill. Wamego is not set up very well for tornado drills. All the students file into the gym, and all the boys go in the boys' locker room, and all the girls go in the girls' locker room. And so he went to the boys' locker room. He was kind of deer in the headlights, wasn't sure what to do because he couldn't go into his locker room. And one student in there goes, "What are you doing in here?" He says, "I'm transgender, you know, I'm in here now." And the kid was like, "No, you're not. You're a girl, get out, you know." And he just went and sat in the corner. We went and talked with the counselor about ways to remedy this situation. And like I said, the teachers have all been fantastic. So they went and talked to Sid's math teacher, Mr. Robinson, and said, you know, would you be willing during the tornado drills to just come in the locker room with Sid? And Sid is the one who asked him that, with the counselor by his side. And he's like, yeah, man, that's fine, I'll go with you. And so during the next tornado drill, they just walked into the locker room together, didn't really say anything, just went and sat down, and everything was fine. It worked out fine. And that child, after that incident, has not given my kid any more grief or anything like that. It was just that one-time instance. But that little step of Mr. Robinson saying, yeah, I'll just walk in the locker room with you, walked in, sat down, didn't have to do anything else, just sat by him. And I mean, it made a world of difference for Sid. So little things like that can go a very long way. I pulled up some resources a little bit here. GLSEN is the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. This is online. You guys can look it up very easily. But they offer a lot of educator resources, professional development workshops you can take, and they're all over the country, but Kansas does have a chapter. They can offer safe space kits for you, and also Gay Straight Alliance Jumpstart kits. So does anybody know what the Gay Straight Alliance is? Well, okay. So yeah, Wamego does not have one yet. They do have like a club meeting once a month. It's not quite titled GSA yet. I have a feeling they're well on their way. The thing with the Gay Straight Alliance or any club at Wamego, you have to have a sponsor, and and it has to be a teacher at the school. So I just don't think anybody stepped up to that just yet, but I've also told Sid, I'm like, well, maybe you should go ask somebody. And he's like, I'm happy with the club we got right now. So I said, okay, it's fine. Then just do the club you've got now. So, but I know Manhattan middle schools have it and high school have it. So this is a student from that survey we talked about, their own words. In high school, the staff told me I could not use the men's bathroom because I'd make other students uncomfortable, even though I was out to everyone and none of the students were bothered by my gender. Right, so again, we go back to the teachers kind of making a bigger deal of it than the students. However, in sharp contrast, this is Sid's own words, and that's our dog, Abby. All my teachers respect me, make sure to properly spell my name, and always use correct pronouns. So, same state, two vastly different scenarios, and you can see how much better it is for the student when teachers are supportive. And like I said, you don't have to agree with it. There's a lot of things that students are going to have, their own decisions on. Their families have their own moral standards and decisions and all that. You're not going to agree with every student or every student's family. The biggest thing that I can tell you guys is just be respectful, be there to support them, and I mean, that just makes all the difference in the world. So I think that was it. Yep. So, some questions that you guys asked that maybe I haven't touched on. So, I kind of told you how old Sid was when he came out as transgender, so that was the question number one. And he didn't ask me if he could be transgender. There was no asking involved. It was, like I said, he didn't have the exact word yet, but it was, this is how I feel, like, not is it okay to feel this way. Okay, I'm gonna leave that. Where do you think young kids gather information about transitioning? So like I said, that's how he started coming out to us. And then he was actually at my mom's house with my grandma, or with his grandma. and they were watching TV, and there was a transgender individual on the television, and Sid was like, Grandma, and granted he's 10 years old at this point, it was right about the time he came out, he's like, what's up with that person? And so my mom just explained it very matter-of-factly, transgender, you know, at that point I think it was a male to female, but just why? And then Sid was just like, oh yeah, well, that's what I've been feeling, you know, all these years, okay. So with media out there, the social norms, everything, students are sponges, you know, little kids are sponges. They will pick up on any little thing. So that's where they're gathering this information from. Would you want your child to not be transgender if it was something that you could control? So I have a very hard time with this question because, of course, I want to make my child's life as easy as possible. We all do, right? That being said, being transgender is hard. So in that respect, yes. However, I would never change who my child is. He is the most empathetic, loving, exuberant extrovert. And I feel like if I were to say, change that, I would change his as a whole. Like, and I don't want to do that, you know. And also, just for his own, you know, mental well-being, I would never say that to him. It just, he is what he is. It's people are what they are, and you have to accept them and love them no matter what. So, no, I would not change it at this point. Have the teachers created an inclusive environment for your child? So we went over all the ways they have. Yes, they have done a great job. What kind of information or resources were given to the other students at school to be able to inform them about this topic? So I told you how they were informed. I don't believe any resources were really given to them. However, by 6th grade, you'd be surprised how much students know. I personally know 2 different parents who came to me a few months after Sid was out and was like, wait, your kid? And I'm like, yeah, he, him now. And they're like, okay. They went home and asked their kids, you know, did you know about Sid? And they're like, yeah. What are you talking about? Yeah, we knew. And parents are like, well, do you know what? And they're like, duh, yes, we know what it means. Like, you know, we don't give children enough credit for what they're able to acknowledge, absorb, infer. Do you experience people treating you differently since you have had a child that is transgender? No. Like I said, everybody in town's been super accepting. If you were to just see my child on the street with me, you would never guess that he was ever a girl. So if I'm just we're just out there meeting strangers, they have no clue. You can't tell. So I haven't run into any problems. He's very lucky in that sense that he passes at this age so well. He did go to an LGBTQ camp last August for a couple days, and it wasn't until like a full 24 hours in that he went and sat over with the transgender group. They finally split him up into like different little talking groups, and all the kids were like, wait, you're not just gay? And he's like, no, I'm trans. And they had no idea. They thought he was just a gay kid, gay boy sitting there, but no. So, how did your child's classroom teacher react? Was she helpful or supportive of your child? So yes. I mean, all this started when he was in 5th grade. We did not come out to his 5th grade teacher. We did come out to the 5th grade principal, but it was like April when this was going on. So we were like, you know what? Let's just wait and start it in 6th grade when we can start with a whole new round of teachers instead of 1 month of school left. You know, there was no point at that time. But even the 5th grade principal was super supportive and loving. What has been the best part of being the parent of a transgender child? I really like that one. So Sid said to me a while ago, I feel like I was born this way so that I can be out there and be an advocate and help other kids who don't have the support and just help them through it. And it just made my heart melt. And it just made me realize how empathetic he is. You know, he's talking about wanting to go into counseling, or he'd like to be an art teacher, you know, and just be there for students too, and young kids. He has a big heart in that way. What do you tell your child when they come to you about bullies, parents or kids? So I told you the story about really the only one, and I wouldn't even call that a bully. It was a one-time incident that was taken care of. Like I said, it's weird to know or figure out why students bully the students that they do. Because I have a friend who had to take her child out of the middle school because the bullying was so horrifically bad. And he's doing online education now. And Sid is a transgender child who's there and has no issues. So I don't know what, I would just keep going back to the teachers and the counselors and try to help, be supportive at home. I mean, but like I said, my friend, she had no choice at that point for the safety of her child. So again, as teachers, if a parent is coming to you and saying that their child is being bullied, just be extra vigilant without making it known. You know, you don't want to be letting the cat out of the bag that, you know, and setting them up for more failure with the whole bullying situation. But just be extra vigilant, and if you see bullying, act on it immediately. How do you handle other parents' negative questions about your child? I honestly have gotten no negative questions. I have gotten a lot of questions, and people always preface it with, I'm sorry I'm asking this. I hope I'm not being too invasive. And I always tell, and this goes for all you guys too, if you ask me a question in a respectful manner, and you're truly curious, even if you use a little like politically incorrect terminology or whatever, if you don't truly mean it, it's fine. And I like to be an open book about this so that everybody can learn. And like I said, as long as you're not derogatory, I will answer the question. So I've really not had any negative questions thrown at me. This was the one, who wrote about the hormone blockers? Is that, you did your research. Mm-hmm. So, okay, Sid has hormone blockers. I need to sit down for a minute, sorry. I worked outside for 2 days, which is also why the allergies. But he has the flexible rods, the Hystrulin. He had them put in, not this past March, but the March before. And even though it's been a year, they are still working. The levels are just fine. So we just have to go back every 5 months to check hormone levels. They are working fantastic. We got in to get those before there was any real breast development. So he has no breast development. Like I said, he could go without a shirt. You'd never know at the age of 13 that he was a boy. He's never gotten a period. The hormone blockers are not anything permanent, which is why we felt completely comfortable going to get him, because it gave him a great peace of mind. He was coming to me every night in tears because his breasts were just starting to develop, and he was freaking out every night. Since getting the hormone blocker, his whole demeanor, everything is just calm. He doesn't have that fear and that worry anymore. The hormone blockers, when he stops them, he will either need to go straight into testosterone, because if he doesn't, he will just go straight into female puberty. It'll just be later than most kids, right? Because you're stopping them later, but it is nothing permanent. So I have had people say, well, what about, how do you know? He's so young. And we know as a family, and he knows after having been this way for so long, he's not going to change. And the stats out there from the doctors, he's not going to change back. But when people question that, I always say, what have we done so far that's been permanent? The hormone blockers aren't permanent. Coming out to friends and family and school, if he decides he wants to go back, which I've told him, if you ever want to go back, that's fine. And he said, yeah, I know. I mean, if people are going to hate us for that and give us a lot of grief for that, then they weren't our friends and supportive family to begin with, because this is something that you just, he had to do at the time. But I will tell you, 99.999%, he is not going to go back female. The shots, we did look into the shots first. So insurance doesn't cover either. Our insurance. Some insurances do. There are really good insurances out there. But our insurance did not cover either. However, with the implant, we had to pay for it, but it went towards our deductible. The shots were just going to be completely out of pocket. The shots for a year were going to be $15,000. The hormone blocker implant, $2,000. And it's lasting for over a year. So obviously, we went with the implant and it went towards our deductible, and it's lasting longer than a year. The doctor said she's had a lot of patients who are getting 2 years out of it. So after this one, he'd probably need one more implant, and then by that time, if he's still where he's at, it would be time to start testosterone after that. So, and it is worth the money to me, no doubt, because of the mental security it's giving him at this point in time. And then you got to think in the future, if he went back female, he's going to get all breast growth, period, everything anyway. And if not, we've just saved him having to get a mastectomy. That's what I'm looking for. So just think of how much that surgery costs and how painful that would be. So it's totally worth it, in my opinion. I mean, we made the student, I mean, he made the decision. We made it as a family, the decision as a family. But after talking it through, meeting with the doctor, meeting with the counselor, he had to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria first, and he'd been with the counselor for a year. And when I called her up and I said, I need a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, she's like, yeah, that's already been done. She had it a long time ago. We just decided it was the best action to take. So, I mean, they won't start doing that until the child is like, I mean, there's developmental things, but I'm just giving you a rough age, 10 or 11, 10 might even be a little too early, 11. So I feel like by that age, kids are old enough, they know their bodies, and as long as the decision can be made with the parent and medical professionals, I think it's completely fine. When did your son, daughter realize they were transgender, and how long did it take for them to come out to you? So we went over that. He's always felt transgender, always felt like a boy. First time was 7, worded differently. Second time was 10, and from 10 we just went on. Most challenging thing for me, personally. We had, out of all our family, extended everybody, we had 2 people that were not okay, like at all, to the point of screaming at me on the phone about this. Strangers aren't going to do that to me, friends out in public aren't going to do that to me, but by God, a family member sure can tell me what a horrible mother I am for allowing my child to do this. The one family member, after having time to cool down, and we've showed him research, we showed him how it's helped Sid, and all this, he said, I can't call Sid he, him. And I said, okay, can you just not use pronouns at all then? Now, this person lives out of state, way out of state. We see him once every other year. It's not a daily occurrence. And he said, yes, I can do that. I said, all right, that's good. The relationship between him and myself, it's on my husband's side of the family, definitely isn't what it was, but we're okay with each other now. My sister, that's probably never going to be okay. And it's not just her not accepting my child, the hateful things that she said to me and about him, she'd have to do some serious apologizing and going back for me to be able to forgive that. So you just got to think too, if this is a family member, are you willing to alienate people? Just remember, words mean a lot and hurt when you say them. So, and you know what? I just look at it as she wasn't around a ton anyway, and she's going to act like that. If that's my one loss, okay, I'll go with it. At this point, I don't have a choice. So, and the other thing is, these two individuals, my sister and this other individual, they see Sid once, like I said, once every other year, because my sister doesn't live in state either. Yet those were the two people most vocal about telling me what I was doing wrong and how I should raise my child. And it's like, all the people that see my child on a regular basis, completely on board, saw it coming a mile away. We're not surprised when we told them. So, you know, I just think before you speak is the biggest thing. Hardest part about this from a parent's perspective, that kind of just goes with what I just said. For me personally, every parent's going to have something different. Are you religious, and how did your beliefs affect this decision? So in my family of 5 people, you will get 5 different answers on what they believe, how they believe, all that. For me personally, I believe there is a higher being. I have 2 children that are Christians, including Sid. I have, my one daughter is an atheist. My husband, I say he's a Christian, but he just kind of sits on the sidelines. So in regards to that, our whole family is more of, especially from the Christian standpoint, I guess, it's just love. That is the biggest thing, is just show love, show your acceptance. It didn't impact us personally, and you know, if we were strongly religious, I'm not sure how that would have gone, but that is how we worked it out. It did not play as big of a role into it at all. How did your child's peer respond to it? Okay, we talked about that one. What is the greatest request for educators of your child, and how do you and your child engage in conversation with teachers about their gender, or about their identity expression at school? Greatest request for educators, I've said it, and I'll just keep repeating it, so make sure it sticks. Just be respectful, have a safe space for them. Even if you don't agree with it 100%, you can still show acceptance, not in the way of like, yes, you're okay with it 100%, but you're not going to be derogatory or demeaning to them, right? You're just going to be there to support them. And then, like I said, we've just been very open about talking with all the teachers and students. This was another, who wrote, is it true that parents of children whom change genders actually feel a loss and grieve them? So, I saw it coming for so many years, you know, hindsight's 20/20. I didn't really grieve, like in that sense, until I was going through his closet and taking out all the girl clothes. And then I was like, oh, I really like this outfit, and he'll never see it again, or wear it again. And I know that's superficial, but you know, there is a part that you're just like, this is a big change. The biggest person to have this was my mom. And yes, she grieved the loss of a granddaughter, but I told her, I'm like, Sid's still Sid, still the same personality, and you have a grandson now. And I mean, absolutely loves him unconditionally, best grandma out there, but she cried over it, felt like a loss to her. So yes, it is true. The initial reaction, like I said, acceptance. And how did it change as you move forward? I don't think my reaction really changed at all. It's always just been acceptance, trying to help him do the best, feel the best he can. Be there for him as a parent, be a support system. The one word of advice you could give to teachers who may have students who are transgender in their classroom. So this is where it gets tricky, because right, you may have. Do you think so? Has the student come out to you? It can be a hard line, because you know, you don't want to misgender them, call them the wrong pronouns, but you also don't want to be like, so he, him, if it's a girl, and she's like, no, you know, that can be very detrimental too. So if you know the student is transgender, just ask, what pronouns would you like me to call? You know, And that is one of the most supportive things you can do. Or tell them, I'm here for you. You can come talk to me, you know, or I'll be there to support you against bullies.
Monica, can you talk about how, like, legally with US Swim, they changed his classification, but at school, how is he?
Right, so at school, he cannot be officially changed in the system unless his birth certificate is changed. USA Swim is not official like that, they let him change it, right? Kansas is one of 3 states where you cannot legally change your birth certificate yet. It is up in the court system, a lawsuit has been brought about that, and we're waiting to see what happens with that. You can change your driver's license, just the biggest thing is not your birth certificate. So with his birth certificate not being able to be changed, in the school records, like the deep down records, he is listed as female and always will be. But name has been changed on all documents that everybody sees, right? And like I said, he can run with Keisha as under male. So while it's not been changed deep down, it hasn't had a huge effect on us yet. I mean, we'll see what happens through high school and college, but I'm hopeful that Kansas goes with the other 47 states. Yes?
I didn't ask any questions, but like, I know you said everyone's been super supportive, but how has it impacted your other kids?
Good question. So when Sid came out to them, we were all at the dining room table, and he told them, and then my one daughter went, yeah, okay, saw it coming. My other daughter went, duh, you know, literally just like that. So they knew, they were supportive. My middle daughter immediately, like even before myself or my husband got around to it, started saying he, him. And it was immediate, and it was no mistakes. Maybe because she just knew all along, you know, and just super supportive. And then my older daughter, it took her a couple months to start saying he, him. She's just like, I need to work up to it. I can't just immediately do it. I'm like, that's fine, but she does now. And you know, all their friends, these older friends, they all know Sid as he, him. They say your brother. There's never any issues. I will tell you, if anybody did give any grief about it, they would have their throats. There'd be no doubt. They are super supportive of him. Thank goodness. So does that answer your question? Yes.
So back to the birth certificate thing. So on the birth certificates, it says sex, and you mentioned earlier how sex and gender are different things. So how would that be something, because at birth, the baby, one could argue, doesn't know their identity yet, so all you have is the sex, and so to put the identity on it for the baby, correct me if I'm wrong, but there really is nothing other than the biological, what it is.
Okay, that is true. However, when they're the way they're born, but what if a child's born intersex?
Do they put that on the birth certificate?
You have to put male or female in Kansas. You've got to pick one. So even though a child could have gonads on the outside and ovaries on the inside, literally, you know, you have to pick one. So I'm just saying it's not black and white, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The percentages for that were really pretty low, and then also
They were 1 in 1,500, yeah.
1 in 1,500, and then also so kids that are like that usually they favor one, so
Right.
there's more male or genetically, I don't know.
Right.
There's more male or there's more female, and so that's why it's usually like, okay,
They go that way,
we go
right.
with that, and it's not as much of a 50-50 choice most of the time, and so that's where I kind of have a problem with that, because if when they're born they have a penis or a vagina, it's going to be either a female or a male, and that's not a gender, so that's a sex.
Right, so what about then, let's say when Sid's 20, and he is talking about this. I don't know if I want this for him because it's just so horrifically painful and expensive. But if that's what he chooses to do, gender reassignment surgery. So at that point, he can have a full penis and testicles put in and have ovaries removed and uterus removed. So at that point, then if he has those parts, but he's listed as female on his birth certificate.
Yeah, I'm still confused because if it's gender reassignment, but gender is what you identify with, how can you reassign that with the surgery?
That's a name they use.
So would it be sex reassignment?
Sexual reassignment surgery, yeah. That's why we kind of are going through this, because in the past years, the way they are phrasing these things, it creates confusion right there. Yes, it is sex reassignment surgery. Yeah, they already feel and identify as the gender that they are, right? So yes, you can sexual organ reassignment surgery. That's just a lot to say, but yeah.
So, I'm sorry, so would your hopes be that on a birth certificate it doesn't say male or female at all?
I would just like the option of having it be able to be changed. There is also in a couple states where they are putting male, female, or like X for like non-binary, where people who don't identify at all. I know that is a huge step to go in Kansas. So my hope is just that with proof of transitioning, that it could be changed. I would love to have it be more, but I'm realistic.
But did he pick a middle name too?
He has a middle name.
Curious.
Yes.
I was just.
It is Lincoln, Sid Lincoln. We have not gone through the process of changing his name legally yet. I am thinking of talking to him and surprising him about that for his 16th birthday. It costs money, a chunk of change. But it is also easier to change somebody who's not a legal adult, their name, because it's the parent's choice and you can go take care of it in the courts. Whereas if they're 18 or over, it gets more difficult because then the judge is like, are you running from creditors? And that's why you want to change, what's the reason you want to change your name? Is there more to it than just because you're transgender? Are you trying to avoid bills and stuff like that? So I do know one, what time are we done?
We have about 1 minute.
Oh, sorry, let's talk my ear off here. So yeah, that's my idea right now. I got a couple of years my husband and I have a couple of years. Yes?
So was LGBTQ something that you supported before you had a child?
Yes.
As a member?
Sorry, yes. I remember when, marriage equality was passed, and I was like, woohoo! And said person in the other state, because we were visiting at that time, was just like, I'm so disgusted by that. And I'm just like, no. And he's like, I know you support it, but just no. So, yes.